district would be a dangerous one to lose.
All right, Julie Sorkin and George Solis, thanks so much.
Sad news overnight. Lisa Marie Presley, the daughter of rock and roll legend Elvis Presley, has passed away. Her mother, Priscilla, made the announcement in a statement saying the family is, quote, shocked and devastated by the tragic death of their beloved Lisa Marie. Hours before her death, Priscilla confirmed her daughter had been rushed to the hospital. Paramedics were sent to a home in Calabasas, California earlier that morning after receiving calls that a woman was not breathing. The news came just 2 days after Lisa Marie attended the Golden Globe Awards, where she celebrated Austin Butler's win for portraying her father in the movie Elvis. Lisa Marie Presley was 54 years old.
And straight ahead, an alarming warning about climate change. We'll take a look at what a new report is saying and where we stand.
Also this morning, COVID cases in China are spiking ahead of the country's Lunar New Year celebration. So could this create an even bigger surge? We're going to tell you what officials there are saying. It's coming up next on Morning News Now.
Watch NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt or listen wherever you get your podcasts.
This is what it looks and feels.
With the latest film, the bigger piece of the puzzle.
We begin tonight with breaking news.
How much water ultimately will be forced inland?
Whenever it happens, wherever you are, NBC News, streaming free now.
Hey, podcast fans, ready to unlock our true crime mysteries? Try Dateline Premium on Apple Podcasts. You'll get early access to originals, plus bonus content, and everything is ad-free. So head to Apple Podcasts now to subscribe.
This is what it looks and feels.
From the storm zone.
The bigger piece of the puzzle comes.
New numbers just out this morning.
Good evening. We begin tonight with breaking news just coming in.
We begin this hour with the latest developments.
We're coming on the air with some shakeups big time on Capitol Hill.
How much water ultimately will be forced inland?
Whenever it happens, wherever you are, NBC News, streaming free now.
For Dateline Premium, subscribe now on Apple Podcasts.
We begin top story with that breaking news. This is just in. A lot of stories to get to. What do people need most right now? Did the state and or law enforcement drop the ball anywhere? Are we headed for a recession or a recovery? Migrant families now stranded in Mexico. What's the World Cup experience been like? The civilian effort is not just about fighting, it's also about helping.
Every night, it's your news playlist. Top Story with Tom Llamas. Streaming weeknights at 7 on NBC News Now.
Hey, I'm Hallie. It's good to be with you tonight. There's another legal filing today, and I want to cut through some of the weedsy stuff. And let's just get to the point. They have started to vote on the PACT Act. If you're like, Hallie, stop speaking Washingtonese. This bill would basically give health care to veterans who have exposed to these toxic chemicals. So, Scott, I'm trying to make this as not DC as possible. The increased sort of anger that we've seen now in politics. I saw you searching for, I think, your microphone, Dan. You are.
I was trying to do it on the slide.
Live TV, man. It's okay.
For Dateline Premium, subscribe now on Apple Podcasts.
Good morning. Welcome to Today.
I love mornings. They're full of possibility. And how you start your day sets the tone for the whole day.
We need to pull up one extra chair at the table.
We feel like we're right there with you.
Just ahead, in this half hour, we're going to introduce you to...
Because every day we start our morning so you can take on yours.
How many of you were up there?
At least like 11.
How real is this going back to the moon? How you doing, Lester?
As the U.S. continues to deal with the fallout from a series of natural disasters, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has released an alarming new report about the state of climate change. The organization ranked 2022 as Earth's 6th warmest year on record, with a 1.5 degree Fahrenheit increase. To help break down this report, let's bring in Brenda Ekwurzel. She is a senior climate scientist for the Union of Concerned Scientists. Brenda, good morning to you. This is very timely given what's happening right now in the Southeast. But the 10 warmest years on record have all occurred since 2010. This year was no different. What do these trends show you? And to you, what stood out in this year's report?
What's really important is that fact that you said that the last 9 years are among the 10 hottest since they've been keeping records in the late 1880s. So this tells you that we are really in a warming world. And one of the aspects of the report that is so important is that there was another report released by NOAA just recently about the extreme weather events of 2021. You may remember that the Japan Olympics in the summertime was extremely hot and humid for the athletes. And in that report, they were saying that that marine heat wave that was influencing the weather of Japan at the time of the Olympics was over 40 times more likely because of our human activities that are warming our world. And so the fact that this year is among the 9 of the top 10 hottest in the world since 1880 really tells you we're in a new normal.
And what would you say, where are we seeing the most severe fallout from climate change right now?
One thing we do know, we've been looking at some of the extreme events that people just aren't used to experiencing. For example, Hurricane Irma that hit Florida, and the intensity, the rapid intensification of these hurricanes is something that we're finding is really a feature of some of these really powerful storms, such as hurricanes. And so it's very hard for weather forecasters to warn people to get out of the way. And that's something at the American Meteorological Society meeting all this week is talking about how can we share the weather on news shows and events and new graphics that will better warn people about the triple threats from such storms. It's not just the wind damage, it's the rain that's more extreme and holding more intense, and the storm surge combining together to create threats to life and property, which we can do better to save lives around the world.
And Brenda, we can't forget about the cost to rebuild from these climate disasters. It's quite staggering, $165 billion. So are we investing enough into these programs that will not only help protect against the effects of climate change, but to keep the worst effects of climate change from happening? And if not, what changes would you like to see be made?
It's spot on. The best preparedness is actually designing these structures that we know will be around for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. They have to be designed for the climate of the future, but we're still playing catch up with the buildings that we have that were designed in the last century that people are seeking shelter in. And so many changes can be done. There's many jobs that can be deployed and resources deployed to help protect people, plan for future events so we're more resilient, and keep the most vulnerable, those who are least mobile, those who don't have resources to go out and buy food for 2 weeks that can get through a storm and the power outages. We could do better to improve our electric grid. And all around, there's lots of jobs and energy that we can do to make our communities more resilient, which is good news. We do have solutions.
Yeah, we can all do our part, and it all adds up. Brenda Eckwurzel, thank you so much.
There is a new warning about the COVID pandemic in China. Concerns are growing over a potential surge of cases in rural areas as people set out to travel for the Lunar New Year holiday. So just how bad is the situation? Last week, Chinese health officials said that nearly 90% of people in one of the country's most populated provinces were infected with COVID. Joining us now to discuss is NBC News foreign correspondent Kelly Kobiea. Kelly, good morning to you. We know cases in China have skyrocketed since officials rolled back restrictions last month, moved away from their zero COVID policy. Now festivities for the Chinese New Year are set to kick off next week. How worried are people about a huge rise in cases?
Well, Chinese officials are really trying to downplay this, Joe, saying that the peak has already happened, that this surge has peaked, that the spread of COVID is both predictable and under control. But as you said, we're now coming close to the Chinese Lunar New Year. People will be going from cities, spreading out into the country, into more rural areas. China has a large older population with very low vaccination rates. So the concern from international experts is that, in fact, the virus is going to spread even more than it has already, and there could be a higher death count. Now, China has also said that they have a very low death count since December 7th, saying that only 40 people have died from COVID-related reasons. But there are a lot of questions about those numbers, Joe. And there's also this question of whether or not, as that virus spreads within the country, whether a new variant emerges. It's hard to say. Experts are still debating this because so little information is coming out of the country.
Let's
Joe?
talk about those fatality numbers and the questions surrounding them. I mean, many observers fear that China is not being transparent with the rest of the world about the number of COVID fatalities it's reporting. What more do we know about this?
Yeah, and there's now new evidence pointing to just that. These satellite pictures from technology company, Colorado-based technology company Maxar, shared with NBC News. And what they appear to show is heightened activity at funeral homes and crematoriums in several cities in China. In one case, at a funeral home just outside Beijing, you can see that a large parking lot has been constructed. At another funeral home, it appears that there's much more activity compared to the same time in past years. And this is consistent with our reporting from our NBC colleagues on the ground, reporting more activity at funeral homes, reporting people in white hazmat suits bringing a steady stream of coffins into a funeral home outside Beijing over the course of a week. And also a report from one funeral home that the wait for a cremation was up to 2 weeks. And on top of that, the WHO sort of confirming all of this, saying that they simply don't have enough information from officials in Beijing to get a clear picture of what's happening in the country. Joe.
All right, Kelly Kobiea. Kelly, thank you so much.
To more international headlines now, new developments in the assassination of former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe.
NBC News foreign correspondent Claudio Lavaga joins us with that and other world news. Claudio, good morning.
Good morning. Yes, the suspect who last July shot the former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe during a campaign speech in Japan has now been formally charged with murder. Tetsuya Yamagami was arrested immediately after the shooting and underwent a 6-month mental evaluation. Now prosecutors say he's fit to stand trial. Let's go to Brazil, where on Thursday, the National Artistic Heritage Institute released a report describing the full extent of the damage caused by rioters who rampaged through Congress, the Supreme Court, and the presidential palace last Sunday. According to the report, furniture was burned, portraits defaced, sculptures decapitated, ceramics smashed, and carpets were found soaked with water from the building sprinkler systems as well as with urine. And let's come back here in Italy, where anger is brewing over Ireland's proposal to add health warnings on bottles of wine, beer and spirits. Ireland plans to warn drinkers about the health risks associated with alcohol, but Coldiretti, Italy's biggest farmers association, called them terrifying warnings and a direct attack against Italy, which is a major exporter of wine, of course, because the labels could negatively influence consumer choices, guys. Joe, Kathy?
Yeah, don't mess with Italy's wine,
yeah,
right?
No kidding. That's a good point.
Yeah, Claudio, thank you.
Coming up, anti-Semitism on the rise.
The Anti-Defamation League is reporting an uptick in hostility and prejudice against Jewish people in recent years. What the group is doing to combat these views. We'll have that for you next.
Join Hoda Kotb for season 3 of her podcast, Making Space. Listen now.
I feel like every single person is an inspirational leader or teacher in some way. What can I do in my life? What can I take from this person's story? I think we all want a fresh start.
Join Hoda Kotb for season 3 of her podcast, Making Space.
NBC News, streaming free now.
Hey, I'm Hallie. It's good to be with you tonight. There's another legal filing today, and I want to cut through some of the weedsy stuff. And let's just get to the point. They have started to vote on the PACT Act. If you're like, Hallie, stop speaking Washingtonese. This bill would basically give health care to veterans who have exposed to these toxic chemicals. So, Scott, I'm trying to make this as not DC as possible. The increased sort of anger that we've seen now in politics. I saw you searching for, I think, your microphone, Dan. You are.
I was trying to do it on the slide.
Live TV, man. It's okay.
We begin tonight with breaking news just coming in.
Whenever it happens, wherever you are. NBC News, streaming free now.
Stay on top of breaking news and the biggest stories of the day with NBC News Daily.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Morgan Radford.
And I'm Vicki Wynn.
I'm Aaron Gilchrist.
And I'm Kate Snow.
Get in-depth reporting from across the country.
What's your reaction to the president's comments?
And around the world.
Are Ukrainians continuing to make advances?
And ways you can take care of your health.
Who should be getting tested? And frankly, how often?
And your wallet.
Costs are skyrocketing. How to manage soaring prices.
NBC News Daily. Weekdays from 12 to 4 p.m. Eastern on NBC News Now.
Watch NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt or listen wherever you get your podcasts.
We are back with an alarming new study about anti-Semitism in America. The Anti-Defamation League says the number of Americans who believe at least one stereotype or trope about Jewish people has doubled in just 3 years.
And it comes as more Jewish people report anti-Semitic attacks and harassment along with political rhetoric.
Let's bring in Jonathan Greenblatt, who for more on this, he's the CEO and National Director of the Anti-Defamation League. Jonathan, thanks so much for joining us this morning. I mean, this report focused on sentiments toward Jewish stereotypes, something that I understand was not included in previous studies. So tell us why it was important to have this nuance for this report.
The people we serve at Navy Mutual are like family.
Navy Mutual is a nonprofit organization.
Really quite shocking. So in whole, we found that 20% of the overall population holds strongly held anti-Semitic beliefs. 20%. That's nearly double what we saw when we last did this type of survey in 2019. We saw a high correlation between people who hate recipients who hate Jewish people and those who hate the Jewish state. So a nuance that we looked at here that we hadn't before is how do those tie together? And we found a stunning stat that 17% of Americans are uncomfortable spending time with a person who is supportive of Israel. 40% think the Jewish state is treating the Palestinians like the way the Nazis treated the Jews during the systematic annihilation of the Holocaust. I mean, it's stunning. But more than anything, there are only 7 million Jews in the United States. And to think that 20% of the population, well over 50 million people, possess strongly held anti-Semitic beliefs, that's scary, but it does clarify and help us to understand that in a moment when we have celebrities, entertainers, athletes, elected officials, political candidates taking shots at Jews, weaponizing anti-Semitism, in their public speech, it starts to see the impact that this has on ordinary people around the country.
Jonathan, the ADL also focused on the sentiments of different generations. What did you find? Yeah. Any surprises?
Yes, that's a great question. Some very surprising data. We often think that the next generation is more tolerant, more accepting than older generations. And while generally that may be true, in fact, we see anti-Semitism going up among younger people. Higher degrees of anti-Semitism, prejudice against Jewish people, higher degrees of negative sentiment against the Jewish state. I mean, that really surprised us and underscores why we need to think differently about our interventions to address this issue. So like, for example, DEI programs and trainings, which are so popular on college campuses and in workplaces, often simply don't address anti-Semitism. That needs to change. Anti-Semitism should be as unacceptable as anti-Black racism, anti-AAPI hate, homophobia. We need to make sure that happens. I think we also need to look at anti-bias, anti-hate education in middle schools and high schools, and to make sure, again, that all people, regardless of how they pray or where they're from or who they love, they all need to be treated equally. And so we need to re-examine our education programs to make sure Jews are included.
So important to have these conversations. Jonathan Greenblatt, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And coming up, you've probably heard of Dry January, with people cutting out alcohol this month.
Well, apparently it's the perfect time to go vegan, too. We're going to tell you about Veganuary and all of its health benefits. You're watching Morning News Now.
Join Hoda Kotb for season 3 of her podcast, Making Space. Listen now.
Hey, podcast fans, ready to unlock our true crime mysteries? Try Dateline Premium on Apple Podcasts. You'll get early access to originals, plus bonus content, and everything is ad-free. So head to Apple Podcasts now to subscribe.
NBC News, streaming free now.
How many of you were up there?
At least like 11.
How real is this going back to the moons? How you doing, Lester?
Hey, I'm Hallie. It's good to be with you tonight. There's another legal filing today, and I want to cut through some of the weedsy stuff. And let's just get to the point. They have started to vote on the PACT Act. If you're like, Hallie, stop speaking Washingtonese. This bill would basically give health care to veterans who have exposed to these toxic chemicals. So, Scott, I'm trying to make this as not DC as possible. The increased sort of anger that we've seen now in politics. I saw you searching for, I think, your microphone, Dan. You are.
I was trying to do it on the slide.
Live TV, man. It's okay.
Morning, Al. Morning, Cap.
Good morning. Welcome to Today.
I love mornings. They're full of possibility. And how you start your day sets the tone for the whole day.
To have you along with us.
We need to pull up one extra chair at the table.
We feel like we're right there with you.
Just ahead, in this half hour, we're going to introduce you to...
Because every day we start our morning so you can take on yours.
What do people need most right now? Did the state and/or law enforcement drop the ball? Migrant families now stranded in Mexico. What's the World Cup experience been like?
It's your news playlist. Top story with Tom Yamas. Weeknights at 7 on NBC News Now.
The big variable, the storm surge. How much water will ultimately be pushed inland? How many of you were up there?
At least like 11.
How real is this going back to the moon? What our top story tonight? You guys okay?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. What kind of training? How you doing, Lester?
The day's biggest political stories with trusted insight and expert analysis. A daily look at the politics behind the headlines. Meet the Press Now, streaming weekdays at 4 p.m. on NBC News Now.
This is what it looks and feels
What's the latest
like.
The bigger piece of the puzzle.
We begin tonight with breaking news.
How much water ultimately will be forced inland?
Whenever it happens, wherever you are, NBC News, streaming free now.
Financial headlines now. After the holiday travel meltdown, Southwest CEO has plans to address operations concerns.
CNBC's Pippa Stevens joins us now for this and more money news. Good morning, Pippa.
Good morning. Well, Southwest Airlines, the CEO says all options are on the table to ensure last month's operations meltdown doesn't happen again. Southwest has hired an outside consulting firm to investigate the disruption that canceled thousands of flights and stranded passengers over the Christmas holiday weekend. Southwest has also adopted some interim measures, including a software update to automate the scheduling system for flight crews. Meantime, HBO Max is raising the price of its ad-free version for the first time since the streaming service launched in 2020. The monthly subscription is going up by $1 to $15.99. HBO Max is facing pressure from slowing user growth and competition from larger rivals Netflix and Disney Plus, which both raised prices for some of their plans last year. And the IRS will start accepting and processing tax returns on January 23rd. The filing deadline for most people to submit their 2022 returns, ask for an extension, and pay money owed is April 18th. The normal filing date of April 15th falls on a weekend, and the District of Columbia's Emancipation Day holiday is on the 17th. The IRS says taxpayers should expect a smoother filing season this year. The agency has added 5,000 customer service representatives and continues to chip away at the backlog of unprocessed returns from last year. You know, as someone who only ever files on the very last day, I can't believe there are actual people that file in January.
Yeah. I got my email from my accountant the other day, and I'm like, am I going to get ahead of the curve this year?
No, not a chance.
Right. Thanks, Pip. I appreciate it.
All right, well, now this month, many of us are saying bye-bye to burgers and switching to salad as part of the phenomenon known as Veganuary.
Yeah, that is right. It is the growing movement to go vegan for the month of January, cutting out all foods in your diet that come from animals. Participants include celebrities like Billie Eilish, who has been encouraging her fans to consider both the health and environmental benefits of a plant-based diet.
Joining us now for some expert tips on giving it a try is author, public health nutritionist, and longtime vegan, Tracy McWhirter. Good morning, Tracy. Happy Friday. So I understand that you've been a vegan for about 36 years now. So what made you change your diet, and why do you think more people are jumping on board to do this?
Yes, good morning, Joe and Kathy. Thanks for having me. I have been vegan for 36 years, and my mother planted the earliest seed back in 1960s. And we were health conscious omnivores. We ate meat and dairy, but we didn't have junk food, sugar. We cooked from scratch most days. We always had vegetables, and I hated it. But when I was a sophomore at Amherst College, Dick Gregory gave a lecture to our campus about why we should eat plant-based foods and all of the connections to justice, to health, to the even the climate back then. And so that really piqued my interest because I was already familiar with eating healthy food. So yes, it's been 36 years and I've been teaching people how to do it for about 34 years.
You hated vegetables as a kid and look at you now. So that means there is hope for everyone. I mean, talk to us a little bit about the health benefits that come with a vegan diet.
Sure. So we know that eating whole plant-based foods, in particular fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, and nuts as ingredients in delicious meals, that's the healthiest way to eat, and it can reduce the risk of our major chronic diseases like certain cancers, heart disease, stroke, diabetes by up to 80% or more. So those are the primary benefits, and we want more people to eat these ingredients because it can greatly help to increase their quality of life and their longevity.
Now, Tracy, vegan diets for some can be a little overwhelming, right? Especially for a beginner like myself who might be giving up their favorite foods. Do you have any good tips for people just trying out Veganuary for the first time? Because I think, you know, this might be a misconception, but I feel like I'm going to be pretty hungry if I don't have some sort of protein, some sort of meat in my diet.
Well, that is a common misconception, and I want to kind of dispel that right now. There's lots of delicious food to eat. Follow your favorite vegan influencers, get their recipes online, their cookbooks. Of course, 10 Million Black Vegan Women is one of them. Veganuary itself is one of them. And you want to have ease and grace with yourself and focus on what you can do that's easy. So if you like stir fries, if you like pastas, if you like burgers, if you like wraps, veganize those and start there because those things are easy for you. You already make them and you can veganize them. So take a stir fry, for example. If you use chicken and colorful vegetables and grains, just swap out chickpeas, mushrooms, black beans, red beans, nuts, cashews, almonds. That's an easy thing to do. If you like pasta dishes, make your pasta dishes the normal way that you would. Just add fresh fruits and vegetables like tomatoes and zucchini and squash and sweet potatoes. You can add tofu, you can add beans, you can add nuts. The same with wraps, the same with salads. And then treat yourself to pizza night on Fridays. Vegan pizza.
I think we're all really hungry after that list.
kidding.
Some good ideas. Veganuary. Might give it a shot. We have a couple weeks left. Why not? All right, Tracy, thanks so much.
All right, thank you, Tracy, and our apologies to Tracy. We're about to make a very aggressive turn here. Coming up, a double dream that many have hoped for, and now it's becoming a reality.
Yeah, so In-N-Out is expanding in the East. Will it be a city near you? We'll reveal its new location for you next.
This is what it looks and feels
From the
like.
storm zone.
The bigger piece to the puzzle, new numbers just out this morning.
We begin with breaking news just coming in.
Russia has launched another round of attacks.
What was it like when you came back and saw your neighborhood like this?
They say that in modern war, there aren't any front lines anymore. Here,
There certainly are.
And we begin with the breaking news. Hurricane Ian gaining in strength.
We've had some of the strongest winds here.
How many of you were up there?
At least like 11.
Now to the economy as Americans face the highest inflation rate in decades.
How does this all impact your wallet? More fallout from Elon Musk's Twitter takeover.
An urgent warning this hour about the flu.
How does RSV specifically hit some kids so hard, and then it seems like it almost doesn't affect others? Can voters trust that you will be able to do this job?
Why should voters believe you?
This special election night.
We love it. We live for this.
We have a substantial team of NBC News correspondents fanned out.
This is the first time we've not been able to call control of the House on election night.
Tonight, we'll take an unflinching look at the resurgence of anti-Semitism in America.
They're waiting until Title 42 is lifted before they decide whether to cross into the United States.
What made you decide to go the medicinal healing route for what you're growing here?
Who should be accountable? The city points the finger at the state at the city.
Making news right now.
We are live on the ground there.
I want to show you an up-close look at what we're talking about here.
The news continues right now.
NBC News, streaming free now.
I think when you open your eyes, you get to decide, how's my day going to be? We want to be a way to start your day, lighten your load, every single morning.
Watch NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt or listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Join Hoda Kotb for season 3 of her podcast, Making Space. Listen now.
The 2023 Girl Scout cookie season has officially started, and this year they're bringing something new, a brand new cookie, Raspberry Rally, considered a sister cookie to the beloved Thin Mint. It's described as a thin and crispy cookie infused with raspberry flavor and then dipped in chocolate coating. It's the first in the Girl Scout cookie lineup to be offered exclusively online, so you can't buy them on sidewalks outside grocery stores right now, I guess, Kathy.
Wow, that looks delicious. Yeah. I want to give it a shot.
I know, I wanted to.
Yeah, it's my favorite time of year, Girl Scout season. I feel like I'm dressed like a Girl Scout today.
You're ready to go.
Yep. All right, Joe, thanks. Well, get ready, East Coast. A little piece of California gold is headed your way. In-N-Out is set to make its grand opening in Tennessee by 2026, bringing major competition to chicken shops across the state. NBC News correspondent Aaron McLaughlin takes a bite out of the story.
Nothing says California cuisine quite like a thick, juicy burger from In-N-Out. An LA favorite of locals, tourists, even celebrities celebrating big wins.
I love In-N-Out Burger.
What began as the Golden State's first drive-through hamburger stand, now making moves to Tennessee. Set to open its first Tennessee location by 2026.
I'm very happy to meet the customers here and make their dreams come true, and probably a few other states a little upset.
And an East Coast In-N-Out was once a fantasy of the late Anthony Bourdain.
Every once in a while, some cruel person starts a rumor. Everybody in New York goes insane. Oh my God, In-N-Out is coming.
When In-N-Out opened in Colorado, people waited in line for 12 hours to get that double-double with fries. But can the SoCal staple flourish in a state known for its fiery fried chicken?
For almost 75 years, Angelinos have driven through locations like this one. Now it's Tennessee's turn. In-N-Out says it could expand even further. And the question for everyone craving all of this, how close and how soon? Aaron McLaughlin, NBC News, Los Angeles.
Now I'm really hungry.
Yeah, me too.
That does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
The news continues right now. Good morning. Happy Friday. I'm Kathy Parkin for Savannah Sellers.
And I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, path of destruction. The South is waking up to devastation after more than 24 tornado reports. At least 7 people confirmed dead, at least 6 of them in Alabama. This morning, we're getting a closer look at the damage. And we've got to look at what's next for the West Coast with yet another severe storm expected to hit California. Bombshell announcement. Attorney General Merrick Garland names a special counsel to look into whether President Biden mishandled classified information. This comes after a batch of documents from the Obama administration were found at the president's Delaware home, in addition to a D.C. office he used. What the White House is saying about this new step in the investigation. Plus, remembering